I am a brother to dragons, and a companion to owls. Job, chapter 30, verse 29. I started up the steps leading to the throne. Again, the lifts were too high, the treads too wide, and now I had no one to steady me. I was reduced to crawling up those confounded steps while Satan looked down at me with a sardonic smile. From all around came music from an unseen source. Death music, vaguely Wagnerian, but nothing I could identify. I think it was laced with that below-sonic frequency that makes dogs howl, horses run away, and causes men to think of flight or suicide. That staircase kept stretching. I didn't count the number of steps when I started up, but the flight looked to be about 30 steps. No more. When I had been crawling up it for several minutes, I realized that it looked as high as ever. The Prince of Lies. So I stopped and waited. Presently, that rumbling voice said, "Something wrong, Saint Alexander?" "Nothing wrong," I answered, "because you planned it this way. If you really want me to approach you, you will turn off the joke circuit. In the meantime, there is no point in my trying to climb a treadmill." "You think I am doing that to you?" "I know that you are. A game, cat and mouse." "You are trying to make a fool of me in front of my gentlemen." "No, Your Majesty, I cannot make a fool of you. Only you can do that." "Ah, so. Do you realize that I can blast you where you stand?" "Your Majesty, I have been totally in your power since I entered your realm. What do you wish of me? Shall I continue trying to climb your treadmill?" "Yes." So I did, and the staircase stopped stretching, and the treads reduced to a comfortable 7 inches. In seconds, I reached the same level as Satan, the level of his cloven feet, that is, which put me much too close to him. Not only was his presence terrifying, I had to keep a close grip on myself, but also he stank of filthy garbage cans, of rotting meat, of civet and skunk, of brimstone, of closed rooms and gas from diseased gut, all that and worse. I said to myself, "Alex Hergensheimer, if you let him prod you into throwing up and thereby kill any chance of getting you and Marga back together, just don't do it. Control yourself." "The stool is for you," said Satan. "Be seated." Near the throne was a backless stool, low enough to destroy the dignity of anyone who sat on it. I sat. Satan picked up a manuscript with a hand so big that the business-size sheets were like a deck of cards in his hand. "I've read it. Not bad. A bit wordy, but my editors will cut it. Better that way than too brief. We will need an ending for it. From you or by a ghost. Probably the latter. It needs more impact than you give it. Tell me, have you ever thought of writing for a living, rather than preaching?" "I don't think I have the talent." "Talent schmalent. You should see the stuff that gets published, but you must hike up those sex scenes. Today's cash customers demand such scenes wet." "Never mind that now. I didn't call you here to discuss your literary style and its shortcomings. I called you in to make you an offer." I waited. So did he. After a bit, he said, "Aren't curious about the offer?" "Your Majesty, certainly I am. But if my race has learned one lesson concerning you, it is that a human should be extremely cautious in bargaining with you." He chuckled, and the foundations shook. Poor little human. Did you really think that I wanted to dicker for your scrawny soul? I don't know what you want, but I'm not as smart as Dr. Faust, and not nearly as smart as Daniel Webster. It behooves me to be cautious. Oh, come, I don't want your soul. There's no market for souls today. There are far too many of them, and quality is way down. I can pick them up at a nickel a bunch, like radishes. But I don't. I'm overstocked. No, St. Alexander, I wish to retain your services. Your professional services. I was suddenly alarmed. What's the catch? Alex, this is loaded. Look behind you. What's he after? Do you need a dishwasher? He chuckled again, about 4.2 on the Richter scale. No, St. Alexander. Your vocation, not the exigency to which you were temporarily reduced. I want to hire you as a gospel shouter, a Bible thumper. I want you to work the Jesus business, just as you were trained to. You won't have to raise money or pass the collection plate. The salary will be ample and the duties light. What do you say? I say you are trying to trick me. Now, that's not very kind. No tricks, St. Alexander. You will be free to preach exactly as you please, no restrictions. Your title will be personal chaplain to me and primate of hell. You can devote the rest of your time, as little or as much as you wish, to saving lost souls. And there are plenty of those here. Salary to be negotiated, but not less than the incumbent, Pope Alexander VI, a notoriously greedy soul. You won't be pinched, I promise you. Well, how say you? Who's crazy, the devil or me? Or am I having another of those nightmares that have been dogging me lately? Your Majesty, you have not mentioned anything I want. Ah, so? Everybody needs money. You're broke. You can't stay in that fancy suite another day without finding a job. He tapped the manuscript. This may bring in something someday. Not soon. I'm not going to advance you anything on it. It might not sell. There are too many I was a prisoner of the evil king extravaganzas on the market already these days. Your Majesty, you have read my memoir. You know what I want. Eh? Name it. You know. My beloved, Margrethe Svensdatter Gunderson. He looked surprised. Didn't I send you a memo about that? She's not in hell. I felt like a patient who has kept his chin up right up to the minute the biopsy comes back, and then can't accept the bad news. Are you sure? Of course I am. Who do you think is in charge around here? Prince of Liars. Prince of Lies. How can you be sure? The way I hear it, nobody keeps track. A person could be in hell for years, and you would never know one way or the other. If that's the way you heard it, you heard wrong. Look, if you accept my offer, you'll be able to afford the best agents in history, from Sherlock Holmes to J. Edgar Hoover, to search all over hell for you. But you'd be wasting your money. She is not in my jurisdiction. I'm telling you officially. I hesitated. Hell is a big place. I could search it by myself throughout eternity, and I might not find Marga. But plenty of money, how well I knew it, made hard things easy and impossible things merely difficult. However, some of the things I had done as executive deputy of CUD may have been a touch shoddy. Meeting a budget isn't easy, but as an ordained minister, I had never hired out to the foe. Our ancient adversary. How can a minister of Christ be chaplain to Satan? Marga, darling, I can't. No.
I can't hear you. Let me sweeten the deal. Accept, and I will assign my prize female agent, Sister Mary Patricia, to you permanently. She'll be your slave, with the minor reservation that you must not sell her. However, you can rent her out if you wish. How say you now?
No.
Oh, come. You ask for one female, I offer you a better one. You can't pretend not to be satisfied with Pat. You've been shacked up with her for weeks. Shall I play back some of the sighs and moans?
You unspeakable cad!
Tut. Don't be rude to me in my own house. You know, and I know, and we all know, that there isn't any great difference between one female and another, save possibly in their cooking. I'm offering you one slightly better in place of the one you mislaid. A year from now you'll thank me. 2 years from now you'll wonder why you ever fussed. Better accept, Saint Alexander. It is the best offer you can hope for, because, I tell you solemnly, that Danish zombie you ask for is not in hell. Well?
No. Satan drummed on the arm of his throne and looked vexed.
That's your last word?
Yes.
Suppose I offered you the chaplain job with your ice maiden thrown in.
You said she wasn't in hell.
I did not say that I did not know where she is.
You can get her?
Answer my question. Will you accept as my chaplain if the contract includes returning her to you?
Marga. No. Satan said briskly.
Sergeant General, dismiss the guard. You come with me. Left, right. Haste, forward, up.
Satan got down from his throne, went around behind it without further word to me. I had to hurry to catch up with his giant strides. Back of the throne was a long, dark tunnel. I broke into a run when it seemed that he was getting away from me. His silhouette shrank rapidly against a dim light at the far end of the tunnel. Then I almost stepped on his heels. He had not been receding as fast as I had thought. He had been changing in size. Or I had been. He and I were now much the same height. I skidded to a halt close behind him as he reached a doorway at the end of the tunnel. It was barely lighted by a red glow. Satan touched something at the door. A white fanlight came on above the door. He opened it and turned toward me. "Come in, Alec." My heart skipped, and I gasped for breath. Jerry? Jerry Farnsworth? 27. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 18. And Job spake and said, Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, There is a man-child conceived. Job chapter 3, verses 2 and 3. My eyes dimmed, my head started to spin, my knees went rubbery. Jerry said sharply, "Hey, none of that!" Grabbed me around the waist, dragged me inside, slammed the door. He kept me from falling, then shook me and slapped my face. I shook my head and caught my breath. I heard Katie's voice. "Let's get him in where he can lie down." My eyes focused. "I'm okay. I was just taken all over queer for a second." I looked around. We were in the foyer of the Farnsworth house. "You went into syncope. That's what you did. Not surprising, you had a shock. Come into the family room." "All right." "Hi, Katie. Gosh, it's good to see you." "You too, dear." She came closer, put her arms around me and kissed me. I learned again that while Marga was my be-all, Katie was my kind of woman too. And Pat. Marga, I wish you could have met Pat. Marga. The family room seemed bare, unfinished furniture, no windows, no fireplace. Jerry said, "Katie, give us Remington No. 2, will you please? I'm going to punch drinks." "Yes, dear." While they were busy, Sybil came tearing in, threw her arms around me, almost knocking me off my feet. The child is solid. And kissed me, a quick buss unlike Katie's benison. "Mr. Graham, you were terrific. I watched all of it. With Sister Pat. She thinks you're terrific too." The left wall changed into a picture window, looking out at mountains. The opposite wall now had a fieldstone fireplace, with a brisk fire that looked the same as the last time I saw it. The ceiling now was low. Furniture and floor and fixtures were all as I recalled. "Remington No. 2? Katie turned away from the controls. "Sybil, let him be, dear. Alec, off your feet. Rest." "All right." I sat down. Is this Texas? Or is it hell?" "Matter of opinion," Jerry said. "Is there a difference?" asked Sybil. "Hard to tell," said Katie. "Don't worry about it now, Alec. I watched you too, and I agree with the girls. I was proud of you." "He's a tough case," Jerry put in. "I didn't get a mite of change off him. Alec, you stubborn squarehead, I lost 3 bets on you." Drinks appeared at our places. Jerry raised his glass. "So here's to you." "To Alec. Right." "Here's to me," I agreed, and took a big slug of Jack Daniels. "Jerry, you're not really—" He grinned at me. The tailored ranch clothes faded, the western boots gave way to cloven hooves, horns stuck up through his hair, his skin glowed ruddy red and oily over heavy muscles. In his lap, a preposterously huge phallus thrust rampantly skyward. Katie said gently, "I think you've convinced him, dear, and it's not one of your prettier guises." Quickly, the conventional devil faded, and the equally conventional Texas millionaire returned. "That's better," said Sybil. "Daddy, why do you use that corny one?" "It's an emphatic symbol. But what I'm wearing now is appropriate here, and you should be in Texas clothes too." "Must I? I think Patty has Mr. Graham used to skin by now." "Her skin, not your skin. Do it before I fry you for lunch." "Daddy, you're a fraud." Sybil grew blue jeans and a halter without moving out of her chair. "And I'm tired of being a teenager and see no reason to continue the charade. St. Alec knows he was hoaxed." "Sybil, you talk too much." "Dear one, she may be right," Katie put in quietly. Jerry shook his head. I sighed and said what I had to say. "Yes, Jerry, I know I've been hoaxed. By those who I thought were my friends, and Marga's friends, too." "You have been behind it all? Then who am I? Job?" "Yes and no." "What does that mean, Your Majesty?" "Alec, you need not call me that. We met as friends. I hope we will stay friends." "How can we be friends if I am Job?" Your Majesty, where is my wife? Alec, I wish I knew. Your memoir gave me some clues, and I have been following them, but I don't know as yet. You must be patient. Damn it, patient I'm not. What clues? Set me on the trail. Can't you see that I'm going out of my mind? No, I can't. Because you're not. I've just been grilling you. I pushed you to what should have been your breaking point. You can't be broken. However, you can't help me search for her. Not at this point. Alec, you've got to remember that you are human, and I am not. I have powers that you can't imagine. I have limitations that you cannot imagine too, so hold your peace and listen. I am your friend. If you don't believe that I am, you are free to leave my house and fend for yourself. There are jobs to be had down at the lakefront, if you can stand the reek of brimstone. You can search for Marga your own way. I don't owe you two anything, as I am not behind your troubles. Believe me. I want to believe you. Perhaps you'll believe Katie. Katie said, Alec, the Old One speaks sooth to you. He did not compass your troubles. Dear, did you ever bandage a wounded dog, and have the poor beastie, in its ignorance, gnaw away the dressing and damage itself still more? Yes. My dog Brownie. I was 12. Brownie died. Don't be like that poor dog. Trust Jerry. If he is to help you, he must do things beyond your ken. Would you try to direct a brain surgeon, or attempt to hurry one? I smiled ruefully and reached out to pat her hand. I'll be good, Katie. I'll try. Yes, do try, for Marga's sake. I will. Jerry, stipulating that I'm merely human and can't understand everything, can you tell me anything? What I can, I will. Where shall I start? Well, when I asked if I was Job, you said yes and no. What did you mean? You are indeed another Job. With the original Job, I was, I confess, one of the villains. This time, I'm not. I'm not proud of the fashion in which I bedeviled Job. I'm not proud of the fashion in which I have so often let my brother, Yahweh, maneuver me into doing his dirty work, starting clear back with Mother Eve, and before that, in ways I cannot explain, and I've always been a sucker for a bet, any sort of a bet, and I'm not proud of that weakness either. Jerry looked at the fire and brooded. Eve was a pretty one. As soon as I laid eyes on her, I knew that Yahweh had finally cooked up a creation worthy of an artist. Then I found out he had copied most of the design. Huh? But, man, do not interrupt. Most of your errors, this my brother actively encourages, arise from believing that your God is solitary and all-powerful. In fact, my brother, and I too, of course, is no more than a corporal in the TO of the Commander-in-Chief. And, I must add, the great one I think of as the C&C, the chairman, the final power, may be a mere private to some higher power I cannot comprehend. Behind every mystery lies another mystery. Infinite recession. But you don't need to know final answers, if there be such, and neither do I. You want to know what happened to you and to Margreta. Yahweh came to me and offered me the same wager we had made over Job, asserting that he had a follower who was even more stubborn than Job. I turned him down. That bet over Job had not been much fun. Long before it was concluded, I grew tired of clobbering the poor schmo. So this time I told my brother to take his shell games elsewhere. It was not until I saw you and Marga trudging along Interstate 40, naked as kittens and just as helpless, that I realized that Yahweh had found someone else with whom to play his nasty games. So I fetched you here and kept you for a week or so. What? Just one night? Don't quibble. Kept you long enough to wring you dry, then sent you on your way, armed with some tips on how to cope. Yes. But in fact, you were doing all right on your own. You're a tough son of a bitch, Alec. So much so that I looked up the bitch you are the son of. A bitch she is, and tough as she was, the combo of that vixen and your sweet and gentle sire produced a creature able to survive. So I let you alone. I was notified that you were coming here. My spies are everywhere. Half of my brother's personal staff are double agents. St. Peter? Eh? No, not Pete. Pete is a good old Joe, the most perfect Christian in heaven or on earth. Denied his boss thrice, been making up for it ever since. Utterly delighted to be on nickname terms with his master in all three of his conventional aspects. I like Pete. If he ever has a falling out with my brother, he's got a job here. Then you showed up in hell. Do you recall an invitation I extended to you concerning hell? Look me up. I promise you some hellacious hospitality. Yes. Did I deliver? Careful how you answer. Sister Pat is listening. She's not listening, Katie denied. Pat is a lady, not much like some people. Darling, I can shorten this. What Alec wants to know is why he was persecuted, how he was persecuted, and what he can do about it now. Meaning Marga. Alec, the why is simple. You were picked for the same reason that a pit bull is picked to go into the pit and be torn to ribbons, because Yahweh thought you could win. The how is equally simple. You guessed right when you thought you were paranoid. Paranoid but not crazy. They were indeed conspiring against you. Every time you got close to the answer, the razzle-dazzle started over again. That $1 million? Minor razzle-dazzle. That money existed only long enough to confuse you. I think that covers everything but what you can do. What you can do, and all that you can do, is to trust Jerry. He may fail, it's very dangerous, but he will try. I looked at Katie with increased respect and some trepidation. She had referred to matters I had never mentioned to Jerry. Katie, are you human? Or are you, a fallen throne or something like that? She giggled. First time anyone has suspected that. I'm human, all too human, Alec love. Furthermore, I'm no stranger to you. You know lots about me. I do? Think back. April of the year 1446 years before the birth of Yeshua of Nazareth. I should be able to identify it that way? I'm sorry, I can't. Then try it this way. Exactly 40 years after the exodus from Egypt of the children of Israel. The conquest of Canaan. Oh, pshaw! Try the book of Joshua, chapter 2. What's my name? What's my trade? Was I mother, wife, or maid? One of the best-known stories in the Bible. Her? I'm talking to her? Rahab? The harlot of Jericho. That's me. I hid General Joshua's spies in my house, and thereby saved my parents and my brothers and sisters from the massacre. Now, tell me I'm well preserved. Sybil snickered. Go ahead, I dare you. Gosh, Katie, you're well preserved. That's been over 3,000 years, about 3,400. Hardly a wrinkle. Well, not many. Not many? No breakfast for you, young man. Katie, you're beautiful, and you know it. You and Margaretta tie for first place. Have you looked at me? Demanded Sybil. I have my fans. Anyhow, Mom is over 4,000 years old. A hag. No, Sybil, the parting of the Red Sea was in 1491 BC. Add that to the date of the rapture, 1994 AD, then add 7 years. Alec? Yes, Jerry? Sybil is right. You just haven't noticed it. The 1,000 years of peace between Armageddon and the war in heaven is half over. My brother, wearing his Jesus hat, is now ruling on earth, and I am chained and cast down into the pit for this entire 1,000 years. You don't look chained from here. Could I have some more Jack Daniels? I'm confused. I'm chained enough for this purpose. I've ceased going to and fro in the earth and walking up and down in it. Yahweh has it all to himself for the short time remaining before he destroys it. I won't bother his games. Jerry shrugged. I declined to take part in Armageddon. I pointed out to him that he had plenty of homegrown villains for it. Alec, with my brother writing the scripts, I was always supposed to fight fiercely like Harvard, then lose. It got monotonous. He's got me scheduled to take another dive at the end of this millennium to fulfill his prophecies. That war in heaven he predicted in the so-called Book of Revelation. I'm not going to go. I've told my angels that they can form a foreign legion if they want to, but I'm sitting this one out. What's the point in a battle if the outcome is predetermined thousands of years before the whistle? He was watching me while he talked. He stopped abruptly. What's eating on you now? Jerry, if it's been 500 years since I lost Margaretta, it's hopeless, isn't it? Hey, damnation, boy! Haven't I told you not to try to understand things you can't understand? Would I be working on it if it were hopeless? Katie said, Jerry, I had Alec all quieted down, and you got him upset again. I'm sorry. You didn't mean to. Alec, Jerry is blunt, but he's right. For you, acting alone, the search was always hopeless. But with Jerry's help, you may find her. Not certain, but a hope worth pursuing. But time isn't relevant. 500 years or 5 seconds. You don't have to understand it, but do please believe it. All right, I will. Because otherwise there would be no hope. None. But there is hope. All you have to do now is be patient. I'll try. But I guess Marga and I will never have our soda fountain and lunch counter in Kansas. Why not? Asked Jerry. 5 centuries? They won't even speak the same language. There will be no one who knows a hot fudge sundae from curried goat. Customs change. So you reinvent the hot fudge sundae and make a killing. Don't be a pessimist, son. Would you like one right now? Asked Sybil. I don't think he had better mix it with Jack Daniels, Jerry advised. Thanks, Sybil, but I'd probably cry in it. I associate it with Marga. So don't. Son, crying in your drink is bad enough. Crying into a hot fudge sundae is disgusting. Do I get to finish the story of my scandalous youth, or won't anybody listen? I said, Katie, I'm listening. You made a deal with Joshua. With his spies. Alec, love, to anyone whose love and respect I want, you, I mean, I need to explain something. Some people who know who I am, and even more who don't, class Rahab the harlot as a traitor. Treason in time of war, betrayal of fellow citizens, all that. I never thought so, Katie. Jehovah had decreed that Jericho would fall. Since it was ordained, you couldn't change it. What you did was to save your father and mother and the other kids. Yes, but there is more to it, Alec. Patriotism is a fairly late concept. Back then, in the land of Canaan, any loyalty other than to one's family was personal loyalty to a chief of some sort, usually a successful warrior who dubbed himself king. Alec, a horde didn't have that sort of loyalty. So, Katie, in spite of studying at seminary, I don't really have any sharp concept of what life was like back then. I keep trying to see it in terms of Kansas. Not too different. A whore at that time and place was either a temple prostitute or a slave, or a self-owned private contractor. I was a free woman. Oh, yeah? Whores don't fight City Hall. They can't. An officer of the king comes in, he expects free tail and free drinks. Same for the civic patrol, the cops. Same for any sort of politician. Alec, I tell you the truth, I gave away more tail than I sold, and often got a black eye as a bonus. No, I did not feel loyalty to Jericho. The Jews weren't any more cruel, and they were much cleaner. Katie, I don't know of any Protestant Christian who thinks anything bad of Rahab. But I have long wondered about one detail in your story. Your house was on the city wall? Yes, it was inconvenient for housekeeping, carrying water up all those steps, but convenient for business, and the rent was low. It was the fact that I lived on the wall that let me save General Joshua's agents. Used a clothesline. They went out the window. Didn't get my clothesline back, either. How high was that wall? Huh? Goodness, I don't know. It was high. 20 cubits. Was it, Jerry? I was there. Professional interest. First use of nerve warfare in combination with sonic weapons. The reason I ask about the height, Katie, is because it states in the book that you gathered all your family into your house and stayed there, all during the siege. We surely did. 7 horrid days. My contract with the Israelite spies required it. My place was only 2 little rooms, not big enough for 3 adults and 7 kids. We ran out of food, we ran out of water, the kids cried, and my father complained. He happily took the money I brought in. With 7 kids, he needed it. But he resented having to stay under the same roof where I entertained Johns, and he was especially bitter about having to use my bed, my workbench. But used it he did, and I slept on the floor. Then your family were all in your house when the walls came tumbling down? Yes, surely. We didn't dare leave it until they came for us, the 2 spies. My house was marked at the window with red string. Katie, your house was on the wall, 30 feet up. The Bible says that the wall fell down flat. Wasn't anyone hurt? She looked startled. Why, no. Didn't the house collapse? No. Alec, it's been a long time, but I remember the trumpets and the shout, and then the earthquake rumble as the city wall fell, but my house wasn't hurt. Saint Alec? Yes, Jerry? You should know. You're a saint. A miracle? If Yahweh hadn't been throwing miracles right and left, the Israelites would never have conquered the Canaanites. Here this ragged band of Okies comes into a rich country of walled cities, and they never lose a battle. Miracles. Ask the Canaanites, if you can find one. My brother pretty regularly had them all put to the sword, except some few cases where the young and pretty ones were saved as slaves. But it was the Promised Land, Jerry, and they were his chosen people. They are indeed the chosen people. Of course, being chosen by Yahweh is no great shakes. Do you know your book well enough to know how many times he crossed 'em up? My brother is a bit of a jerk. I had had too much Jack Daniels and too many shocks, but Jerry's casual blasphemy triggered me. The Lord God Jehovah is a just God. You never played marbles with him. Alec, justice is not a divine concept. It is a human illusion. The very basis of the Judeo-Christian code is injustice, the scapegoat system. The scapegoat sacrifice runs all through the Old Testament. Then it reaches its height in the New Testament with the notion of the martyred Redeemer. How can justice possibly be served by loading your sins on another? Whether it be a lamb having its throat cut ritually or a Messiah nailed to a cross and dying for your sins, somebody should tell all of Yahweh's followers, Jews and Christians, that there is no such thing as a free lunch. Or maybe there is. Being in that catatonic condition called grace at the exact moment of death or at the final trump will get you into heaven, right? You got to heaven that way, did you not? That's correct, I hit it lucky, for I had racked up quite a list of sins before then. A long and wicked life followed by 5 minutes of perfect grace gets you into heaven. An equally long life of decent living and good works followed by one outburst of taking the name of the Lord in vain, then have a heart attack at that moment and be damned for eternity. Is that the system? I answered stiffly. If you read the words of the Bible literally, that is the system. But the Lord moves in mysterious... Not mysterious to me, bud. I've known him too long. It's his world, his rules, his doing. His rules are exact and anyone can follow them and reap the reward. But just they are not. What do you think of what he has done to you and your Marga? Is that justice? I took a deep breath. I've been trying to figure that out ever since Judgment Day. And Jack Daniels isn't helping. No, I don't think it's what I signed up for. Ah, but you did! How? My brother Yahweh, wearing his Jesus face, said, After this manner therefore pray ye. Go ahead. Say it. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Stop! Stop right there. Thy will be done. No Muslim claiming to be a slave of God ever gave a more sweeping consent than that. In that prayer, you invite him to do his worst, the perfect masochist. That's the test of Job, boy. Job was treated unjustly in every way day after day for years. I know, I was there. I did it. And my dear brother stood by and let me do it. Let me? He urged me. He connived in it. Accessory ahead of the fact. Now it's your turn. Your God did it to you. Will you curse him? Or will you come wiggling back on your belly like a whipped dog? 28. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. I was saved from answering that impossible question by an interruption. And was I glad? I suppose every man has doubts at times about God's justice. I admit that I had been much troubled lately and had been forced to remind myself again and again that God's ways are not man's ways, and that I could not expect always to understand the purposes of the Lord. But I could not speak my misgivings aloud, and least of all to the Lord's ancient adversary. It was especially upsetting that Satan chose at this moment to have the shape and the voice of my only friend. Debating with the devil is a mug's game at best. The interruption was mundane, a telephone ringing. Accidental interruption. I don't think Satan tolerates accidents. As may be, I did not have to answer the question that I could not answer. Katy said, "Shall I get it, dear?" "Please." A telephone handset appeared in Katy's hand. "Lucifer's office, Rahab speaking." "Repeat, please." "I will inquire." She looked at Jerry. "I'll take it." Jerry operated without a visible telephone instrument. "Speaking?" "No." "I said no." "No, damn it. Refer that to Mr. Ashmedai. Let me have the other call." He muttered something about the impossibility of getting competent help, then said, "Speaking?" "Yes, sir." Then he said nothing for quite a long time. At last he said, "At once, sir. Thank you." Jerry stood up. "Please excuse me, Alec. I have work to do. I can't say when I will be back. Try to treat this waiting as a vacation. And my house is yours. Katy, take care of him. Sybil, keep him amused." Jerry vanished. Will I keep him amused? Sybil got up and stood in front of me, rubbed her hands together. Her western clothes faded out, leaving Sybil. She grinned. Katy said mildly, "Sybil, stop that. Grow more clothes at once or I'll send you home." Spoiled sport. Sybil developed a skimpy bikini. I plan to make St. Alec forget that Danish baggage. What'll you bet, dear? I've been talking to Pat. So, what did Pat say? Margaretta can cook. Sybil looked disgusted. A girl spends 50 years on her back, studying hard. Along comes some slotty who can make chicken and dumplings. It's not fair. I decided to change the subject. Sybil, those tricks you do with your clothes are fascinating. Are you a graduate witch now? Instead of answering me at once, Sybil glanced at Katy, who said to her, "All over with, dear. Speak freely." "Okay. St. Alec, I'm no witch. Witchcraft is poppycock. You know that verse in the Bible about not suffering witches to live? Exodus 22:18. That's the one. The old Hebrew word translated there as witch actually means poisoner. Not letting a poisoner continue to breathe strikes me as a good idea. But I wonder how many friendless old women have been hanged or burned as a result of a sloppy translation. Could this really be true? What about the literal Word of God concept on which I had been reared? Of course, the word witch is English, not the original Hebrew. But the translators of the King James Version were sustained by God. That's why that version of the Bible, and only that one, can be taken literally. But, no, Sybil must be mistaken. The good Lord would not let hundreds, thousands of innocent people be tortured to death over a mistranslation he could so easily have corrected. So you did not attend a Sabbath that night? What did you do? Not what you think. Israfel and I aren't quite that chummy. Chums, yes. Buddies, no. Israfel? I thought he was in heaven. That's his godfather, the trumpeter. This Israfel can't play a note, but he did ask me to tell you, if I ever got a chance, that he really isn't the pimple he pretended to be as Roderick Lyman Culverson III. I'm glad to hear that, as he certainly did a good job of portraying an unbearable young snot. I didn't see how a daughter of Katy and Jerry, or is it just of Katy, could have such poor taste as to pick that boor as a pal. Not Israfel, of course, but the part he was playing. Oh, better fix that too. Katie, what relation are we? I don't think even Dr. Darwin could find any genetic relationship, dear. But I am every bit as proud of you as I would be were you my own daughter. Thank you, Mom. But we all are related, I objected, through Mother Eve. Since Katie, wrinkles and all, was born while the children of Israel were wandering in the wilderness, there are only about 80 begats from Eve to Katie. With your birth date and simple arithmetic, we could make a shrewd guess at how close your blood relationship is. Oh, here we go again. St. Alec, Mama Kate is descended from Eve. I am not. Different species. I'm an imp, an Ifrit, if you want to get technical. She again vanished her clothes and did a body transformation. See? I said, Say, weren't you managing the desk at the Sans Souci Sheraton the evening I arrived in hell? I certainly was, and I'm flattered that you remember me, in my own shape. She resumed her human appearance, plus the tiny bikini. I was there because I knew you by sight. Pop didn't want anything to go wrong. Katie stood up. Let's continue this outside. I'd like a dip before dinner. I'm busy seducing St. Alec. Dreamer, continue it outdoors. Outside it was a lovely Texas afternoon, with lengthening shadows. Katie, a straight answer, please. Is this hell? Or is this Texas? Both. I withdraw the question. I must have let my annoyance show in my voice, for she turned and put a hand on my chest. Alec, I was not jesting. For many centuries, Lucifer has maintained pied-à-terre here and there on earth. In each, he had an established personality, a front. After Armageddon, when his brother set himself up as king of Earth for the millennium, he quit visiting Earth. But some of these places were home to him, so he pinched them off and took them with him. You see? I suppose I do. About as well as a cow understands calculus. I don't understand the mechanism. It's on the God level. But those numerous changes you and Marga underwent during your persecution, how deep did each change go? Do you think the entire planet was involved each time? Reality tumbled in my mind in a fashion it had not since the last of those changes. Katie, I don't know. I was always too busy surviving. Wait a moment. Each change did cover the whole planet Earth and about a century of its history. Because I always checked the history and memorized as much as I could. Cultural changes, too. The whole complex. Each change stopped not far beyond the end of your nose, Alec, and no one but you too, was aware of any change. You didn't check history. You checked history books. At least this is the way Lucifer would have handled it, had he been arranging the deception. Katie, do you realize how long it would take to revise, rewrite, and print an entire encyclopedia? That's what I usually consulted. But Alec, you have already been told that time is never a problem on the God level, or space. Whatever was needed to deceive you was provided. But no more than that. That is the conservative principle in art at the God level. While I can't do it, not being at that level, I have seen a lot of it done. A skillful artist in shapes and appearances does no more than necessary to create his effect. Rahab sat down on the edge of the pool, paddled her feet in the water. Come sit beside me. Consider the edge of the Big Bang. What is there out beyond that limit, where the red shift has the magnitude that means that the expansion of the universe equals the speed of light? What is beyond? I answered rather stiffly. Katie, your hypothetical question lacks meaning. I've kept up, more or less, with such silly notions as the Big Bang and the expanding universe because a preacher of the gospel must keep track of such theories in order to be able to refute them. The two you mention imply an impossible length of time. Impossible because the world was created about 6,000 years ago. About because the exact date of creation is hard to calculate, and also because I am uncertain as to the present date. But around 6,000 years, not the billion years or so the Big Bangers need. Alec, your universe is about 23 billion years old. I started to retort, closed my mouth. I will not flatly contradict my hostess. She added, and your universe was created in 4004 BC. I stared at the water long enough for Sybil to surface and splash us. Well, Alec? You've left me with nothing to say. But notice carefully what I did say. I did not say that the world was created 23 billion years ago. I said that was its age. It was created old. Created with fossils in the ground and craters on the moon, all speaking of great age. Created that way by Yahweh, because it amused him to do so. One of those scientists said, God does not roll dice with the universe. Unfortunately not true. Yahweh rolls loaded dice with his universe, to deceive his creatures. Why would he do that? Lucifer says that it is because he is a poor artist, the sort who is always changing his mind and scraping the canvas, and a practical joker. But I'm really not entitled to an opinion. I'm not at that level, and Lucifer is prejudiced where his brother is concerned. I think that is obvious. You haven't remarked on the greatest wonder. Maybe I missed it. No, I think you were being polite. How an old whore happened to have opinions about cosmogony and teleology and eschatology and other long words of Greek derivation. That's the greatest wonder. Not? Why, Rahab, honey, I was just so busy counting your wrinkles that I wasn't This got me shoved into the water. I came up sputtering and spouting and found both women laughing at me. So I placed both hands on the edge of the pool with Katie captured inside the circle. She did not seem to mind being captive. She leaned against me like a cat. You were about to say? I asked. Alec, to be able to read and write is as wonderful as sex. Or almost. You may not fully appreciate what a blessing it is because you probably learned how as a baby and have been doing it casually ever since. But when I was a whore in Canaan almost 4 millennia ago, I did not know how to read and write. I learned by listening, to Johns, to neighbors, to gossip in the market. But that's not a way to learn much, and even scribes and judges were ignorant then. I had been dead nearly 3 centuries before I learned to read and write, and when I did learn, I was taught by the ghost of a harlot from what later became the great Cretan civilization. St. Alec, this may startle you, but in general throughout history, whores learned to read and write long before respectable women took up the dangerous practice. When I did learn, brother, for a while it crowded sex out of my life. She grinned up at me. Almost, anyhow. Presently, I went back to a more healthy balance, reading and sex, in equal amounts. I don't have the strength for that ratio. Women are different. My best education started with the burning of the library at Alexandria. Yahweh didn't want it. So Lucifer grabbed the ghosts of all those thousands of codices, took them to hell, regenerated them carefully, and Rahab had a picnic. And let me add, Lucifer has his eye on the Vatican Library, since it will be up for salvage soon. Instead of having to regenerate ghosts, in the case of the Vatican Library, Lucifer plans to pinch it off intact just before time stop and take it unhurt to hell. Won't that be grand? Sounds as if it would be. The only thing about which I've ever envied the papists is their library. But regenerated ghosts? Slap my back. Huh? Slap it. No, harder than that. I'm not a fragile little butterfly. Harder. That's more like it. What you just slapped is a regenerated ghost. Felt solid. Should be. I paid list price for the job. It was before Lucifer noticed me and made me a bird in a gilded cage, a pitiful sight to see. I understand that if you are saved and go to heaven, regeneration goes with salvation, but here you buy it on credit, then work your arse off to pay for it. That being exactly how I paid for it. St. Alec, you didn't die, I know. A regenerated body is just like the one a person has before death, but better. No contagious diseases, no allergies, no old age wrinkles, and wrinkles my foot. I wasn't wrinkled the day I died, or at least not much. How did you get me talking about wrinkles? We were discussing relativity and the expanding universe, a really high-type intellectual conversation. That night, Sybil made a strong effort to get into my bed, an effort that Katie firmly thwarted, then went to bed with me herself. Pat said that you were not to be allowed to sleep alone. Pat thinks I'm sick. I'm not. I won't argue it. And don't quiver your chin, dear. Mother Rahab will let you sleep. Sometime in the night I woke up sobbing and Katie was there. She comforted me. I'm sure Pat told her about my nightmares. With Katie there to quiet me down, I got back to sleep rather quickly. It was a sweet Arcadian interlude, save for the absence of Margreta. But Katie had me convinced that I owed it to Jerry and to her to be patient and not brood over my loss. So I did not, or not much, in the daytime, and while night could be bad, even lonely nights are not too lonely with Mother Rahab to soothe one after waking up emotionally defenseless. She was always there, except one night she had to be away. Sybil took that watch, carefully instructed by Katie, and carried it out the same way. I discovered one amusing thing about Sybil. In sleep she slips back into her natural shape, imp or Ifrit, without knowing it. This makes her about 6 inches shorter, and she has those cute little horns that were the first thing I had noticed about her at the Sans Souci. Daytimes we swam and sunbathed and rode horseback and picnicked out in the hills. In making this enclave, Jerry had apparently pinched off many square miles. We appeared to be able to go as far as we liked in any direction. Or perhaps I don't understand at all how such things are done. Strike out, perhaps. I know as much about operations on the God level as a frog knows about Friday. Jerry had been gone about a week when Rahab showed up at the breakfast table with my memoir manuscript. St. Alec, Lucifer sent instructions that you are to bring this up to date and keep it up to date. All right. Will longhand do? Or if there is a typewriter around, I guess I could hunt and peck. You do it longhand. I'll do a smooth draft. I've done lots of secretarial work for Prince Lucifer. Katie, sometimes you call him Jerry, sometimes Lucifer. Never Satan. Alec, he prefers Lucifer, but he answers to anything. Jerry and Katie were names invented for you and Marga. And Sybil, Sybil amended. And Sybil, yes, Ygritte. Do you want your own name back now? No, I think it's nice that Alec and Marga have names for us that no one else knows. Just a minute, I put in. The day I met you, all 3 of you responded to those names as if you had worn them all your lives. Mom and I are pretty fast at extemporaneous drama, Sybil Egret said. They didn't know they were fire worshippers until I slipped it into the conversation, and I didn't know I was a witch until Mom tipped me off. Israfel is pretty sharp, too, but he did have more time to think about his role. So we were snookered in all directions, a couple of country cousins. Alec, Katie said to me earnestly, Lucifer always has reasons for what he does. He rarely explains. His intentions are malevolent only toward malicious people, which you are not.